Hey everyone, Todd from Slideshow Effects once again, and in this video we're going to go through the installation and navigation of version 2 of our Stream Deck, of our Cubase Pro Profiles for the Stream Deck Plus device on the Windows system. Now this version 2 has added a lot of updates, including this pack is now Cubase 13 ready, a VST loader that allows you to create instrument tracks and loads a specific VST with a single button press. We have an effects plugin loader, so it will load in any installed effects on your system at the press of a button. We have the integration of control room dial faders and buttons. We can colorize our tracks. We can control our VST parameters with the device. We have access to quick control dials and even dials for our equalizer. Now, if you're updating from an earlier version of our Cubase Pro Profiles for the Stream Deck Plus device, you'll want to go through the entire installation process. Again, many things have changed, including new scripts that we've included and different ways of approaching how these profiles are built. So it's strongly recommended you start from scratch, and as always, use the PDF that is in your download package as your key guide for the installation process, as it will have the most recent and up-to-date information. So that said, let's get started. So the first thing you're going to do, if you haven't done so already, is download a copy of the LoopMIDI application, and we have the link in the PDF and also in the description below. Now once LoopMIDI opens, if you've been using it before, you will have ports already here. If it's your first time using it, this window will be blank. So essentially we're going to create 2 ports for this particular package. Now I've already got them installed here, and I'll demonstrate how you get them in. The first thing you need to do is click on this dialog box down here just to get rid of LoopMIDI port, and you're going to type in exactly as we see it here, capital S-T-R-E-A-M, capital D-E-C-K, the number 2, capital D-A-W, capital T-R-A-C-K. Stream Deck to DAW track, so we would type that into this field here, exactly as you see it. And once you have that typed in correctly, you would then hit the Add Port button. Now I've already got it there, I'm not going to duplicate that. But that's what you do once it's correctly typed in. Hit the Add Port, it'll load it in. And then the second one is the one below, DAW track to Stream Deck, capital D-A-W, capital T-R-A-C-K, the number 2, capital S-T-R-E-A-M, capital D-E-C-K, DAW track to Stream Deck. Just like that. Once that is correctly inputted, you click the Add Port again, and it will create itself right below it. These are the only 2 ports we're using for this version of the Cubase pack. Now this pack does include profiles for Cubase 11 and earlier, or Cubase 12 and 13. So if you're using Cubase 12 or 13, you no longer need to install a shortcut keyboard file, as all of our commands are MIDI driven. So that means that you can use your own shortcut file that you may have customized, and you can use any keyboard language layout. Now if you're on Cubase 11 or earlier, you will still need to continue to use shortcut commands, and you will need to make sure that you're using an English QWERTY keyboard layout. Now if you're on Cubase 11 or earlier, you will need to install the key command file, and in the Windows folder you can see Slideshow Effects key command win. That will need to go to a specific location. Now that location you can see right here, and the same file path is in your PDF. So it's your username, the app data, roaming, Steinberg, your version of Cubase, presets, and key commands. Now obviously we're not going to be putting them in a Cubase 12 or 13 because, as I mentioned earlier, we don't need key commands anymore for those versions. But let's assume I don't have Cubase 11 on this system, but let's say we have Cubase 11 here, it would be in the presets key commands. So that's where you will take this key command file and you'll drag it into here. Now the next thing you want to do is, we have this Trevliga Spel. It's a whole series of graphics inside this folder. and you want to take this and drag it into your Documents folder. Now if you've done this, perhaps you have another pack of ours that uses a Trevliga Spel folder, or you're updating from a previous version of this pack, open up the folder, you would drag these in to your Trevliga Spel folder itself in your Documents folder. Now we can go into this plugin folder, and we have this Mousemove plugin we developed. So with your Stream Deck software open, you would double click this Mousemove plugin and it would install. If you have a previous version of our Mousemove plugin, you can install this. It will overwrite the existing version. Now if you're running Stream Deck version 6.4 or later, we want to install the MIDI plugin. So you would go to the Elgato Marketplace, and in the Marketplace, in the search, we're going to type in MIDI and enter. And it gives us a few options. We're going to load this plugin here, MIDI by Trevliga Spel. And make sure that you're signed in. And if you see an open in Stream Deck, it's likely that you have already installed this either from a previous version of our packs or perhaps from an earlier use. So you don't need to do anything. This would indicate that you already have it installed. If you see a blue Get button here, that means it isn't installed. You would press Get and it would self-install into your software. If you don't see it here at all, you likely will need to be signed into your account in order to be able to get this plugin installed. Now if you're working with Stream Deck version 6.3 or earlier, we're going to go to the Stream Deck store, go to Plugins, and we're going to type in the search field MIDI. And there will be a few results here. This is the one we're interested in, just called MIDI. We're going to, if you don't have it installed, you'll just click the blue install button here, install it, and it will be available for you. Now inside of Cubase itself, you remember if you're a Cubase 11 users, you installed a key file. Well, if you've restarted Cubase, you'll be able to go to Edit, Key Commands, and in the Presets drop-down, you will see the key command file that you just imported. You would select that one, and it would appear here, and you say OK, and then you have loaded up your system for our key file. Now still in Cubase, we're going to go to Studio, and Studio Setup, and we're going to go to the MIDI port setup here. And since we installed those LoopMIDI ports, we should be able to see it listed here amongst our different ports that we have here. So we're going to navigate to where we see DAW track to Stream Deck. This is one of the ones we had entered. In the in port, DAW track to Stream Deck is going to be off for the visibility and off for the in. Go down to Stream Deck to DAW track, which was one of the others that we had installed. In the in column for Stream Deck to DAW track, it will be visible, but the in will be off because this will cause some loopback if you have that one on. Now you go into the out column, we go to DAW track to Stream Deck, it will be turned on, and the Stream Deck to DAW track here at the bottom, it will be turned off. So make sure you just double check in the PDF. We have outlined fairly clearly here which ones are on and which ones are off, and you can compare it to your setup. Now staying in the Studio setup, and this is for Cubase 12 and 13 users only, we're going to go to the MIDI Remote here. We're going to open the MIDI Remote Manager, and in here we're going to click on Import Script, and we're going to navigate to our download. We'll go into the MIDI Remote, into the window folder, and it's this Sideshow Effects Track Mix strip. We'll double click that to load it up, and you'll see it populates here, and you'll see it also pops up in our lower zone. Now we're going to go over to the MIDI controllers here, and we're just going to double check to make sure that Stream Deck to DAW track and DAW track to Stream Deck are in our in and out ports, which they are. It should auto-populate correctly, which it has. In case it hasn't, that's what you want to make sure it looks like right here. Now quick controls are one of the features that we have in this pack, and with the track mix strip that in Cubase 12 and 13, the quick controls get brought along with it. If you want to use quick controls in Cubase 11 or earlier, we have to manually assign it with a new quick control XML. So how we do that, we'll go back into Studio, Setup here, and we're going to click on VST Quick Controls, and we're going to import and go to our download again. And there's a quick control folder. We'll double click that and we'll click on this quickcontrol.xml. Now we'll have to go here to our input, and we want to make sure we select Stream Deck to DAW track and our output DAW track to Stream Deck. And you click apply and say OK. Now the last thing to do is import the profiles themselves. Now in the Stream Deck Plus profile folder we have here, we have two folders, one for Cubase 11 and one for Cubase 12-13. The Cubase 11 has 14 profiles to install. There's a main with 13 that get connected and relinked to it. And the 12-13 has one extra one. We have a control room profile that's not in the Cubase 11 version. Now depending on your system, you can double click these with your Stream Deck software open to self-load them in. I find sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. If it doesn't work by just simply double clicking, you would just open up your preferences and you would click at the bottom here, select import, navigate to the download folder, and click each one of these to import into your device. Now once they're all in, there's a couple more things we will need to assign as we go through. So we'll combine the navigation with the rest of the setup. As we get to certain areas that require you to do a couple other assignments, we'll cover that. Now the rest of this video, we're going to be demonstrating the navigation on a Mac system. It's identical to the Windows system, so follow along and you won't have any issue. Now let's navigate by pulling this down. You'll see that I've got the Cubase 11 profiles loaded in here. We're not going to work on those today. We're just going to concentrate on the Cubase 12 versions that I've just imported. We'll go over to the main profile here, and this is where we can jump to all the different profiles back and forth. We have two pages here in this profile. Now these are all switch profile keys, meaning that when you press on them in your device, it will open up that profile. Now currently, as of this recording, Stream Deck does not retain the links that we have set when we ship the product. So this is a process you need to quickly go through just to relink the correct profiles to the commands. Now what I mean by that is you can see we have a command menu select here. When we press this on our device, we want to make sure that the command menu profile will open. So when I click on it here in the software, you can see it tells us that when you press this, it's going to open our Cubase 11 add track profile. Well, that's incorrect, and then yours will show something entirely different depending on what you have loaded on your system. We want to make sure that we click on this and select the command menu for the one we just loaded. Now when we press that on our device, it will open the correct profile. So if you go to our device and we press on command menu, you can see it opens the command menu profile for us. Now you see we have on our first page here of this profile that we have this back button. We want to make sure when we press this back button, it takes us back to where we were. Where we were was the main menu. So by clicking on it in our software and selecting our Cubase main profile, when I go to the device and press, we can see that we go back to the main menu where we just were. Now this is the sort of linking that we need to do in order for everything to be relinked. So let's go through that process. Tools, we'll go to Tools, MIDI, Add Track. You can see this is the Cubase 11 Add Track. We want to make sure we go to the correct one. Mix Console, Editor, Transport, Colorize. Now that we've just done the first page, let's quickly relink the main keys of each of these profiles. So if I press on Tools, I want to select our main and go back to the main here. Same thing with MIDI. goes back to main. Then we click on add track, back to main. And then we can do the mix console, back to main, editor profile, back to main, transport, and colorize. And you see with Colorize, we don't have a main on the first page here. That's because the way it was designed, we wanted to make sure that we got all the colors in grouped correctly. So our main goes in page 3 here. That's how we get ourselves back to the main here on page 3 of the Colorize profile. Click on that. Select main. And now we can go back. So now we can proceed to page 2 of our main profile here and complete the rest of these. First of all, this main key is just going to take us back to the first page of main. It just takes us back one page. So make sure we go to main on that and make sure it's selected to page 1, which it should be. So the VST plugins, insert effects, grid quantize, custom, control room, only available on 12 by the way. You won't find that in Cubase 11. And quick control. Now let's send each of these profiles back to main. We're going to click on VST plugins, select its main key, send it back to main, but make sure that it goes back to page 2. Because when I press on this, that's going to take us back to page 2, exactly where we were. And that's going to be the case for all of these on page 2 of the main. So insert effects, we're going to press on that. Click on main, and it's page 2. Grid quantize, main, page 2. Custom, control room, and our quick control. You see on the quick control, we don't have the main key on the first page. Go to the second page, and that's where you'll find it. Main. And that takes us back to page 2 of the main. So now you've relinked all of your profiles. So now they're all in the correct place. Okay, so now that we got everything installed, let's take a look at how this pack works and all the different parts associated with it. Now you see we're on our main profile at the moment. Let's take a look at the dial strip here. Now you can see the first indicator on the first dial allows us to change our selected track. So currently we have this track selected down here. Simply rotating the dial allows us to highlight and select the previous or next track. And if you're working in Cubase 11 or earlier, you notice that when we turn, we get a little dial indicator on the device. Cubase 11 or earlier does not have that feature. Now we have stacked a few commands in this particular dial. So by pressing on the dial, we get access to a couple of different commands. And you can select which one you want depending on which part of the screen you press on. So currently you can see that we have scroll is currently highlighted because it has a yellow triangle above it, and it is slightly brighter than the other command, which is jog. So if by rotating this, it's going to scroll our timeline back and forth. And if I just press on the left side of the screen and highlight jog, now the same dial will give us a jog feature. Pressing the dial again gives us control over the quantization. So you can see in our Quantize drop down here, by rotating it back and forth, we can increase or decrease the quantization. Pressing the dial once more, this gives us a navigate feature. You can either navigate horizontally the way it's selected right now with our arrow indicating. So by doing so, when we have the mix console highlighted, that allows us the same sort of feature as our selected track, allowing us to move the track back and forth. Now if I had our track selected and we switch over to vertical here, that will give us the same sort of result. And you can use these horizontal and vertical scan in any window. It just mimics the same action as you would with your mouse. Now pressing in once again takes us back to the selected track function. Now the second dial, we can see that we have a couple of commands here, and currently zoom timeline is selected. So by having our track window open, rotating left and right will zoom our particular timeline. If I click on the right side here, so the zoom track is now highlighted, you can see it is going to increase or decrease the selected track. Pressing in this dial, we can see that we've got zoom vertical and zoom waveform. Well, as the name suggests, since zoom waveform is currently selected, by increasing and decreasing this dial, it increases and decreases our waveform. Now, clicking on the left side, zoom vertical expands the size of our entire timeline. Now taking a look at the dials 3 and 4, you can see we have transport functions and they work as expected with the stop, play, record, and the loop or cycle function. But also you'll see that when you rotate, you can see it's indicated under 3 that it will, if you rotate the dial, it will also give you panning option of the currently selected track. You can see we can pan back and forth of our dial, and on the Cubase 12 version, it shows a dial for you when you rotate. Not available in Cubase 11 or earlier. Now on dial 4, you can see we have track fader, so by rotating this is going to increase or decrease the track fader of the currently selected track, and it also provides a visual feedback as well when you rotate on Cubase 12. If we advance over to the second page of our main, we can see we have a few more options available to us. On the first dial, it is simply a couple of key commands that allow us to open the mix console window or close it. And the same thing with the editor. If you have a track selected, open in the editor, you can open and close the editor with this as well. The zoom dial stack is the same as in page 1. Now on dial 3 here, we have controls allowing us to control the panning of the currently selected track. Clicking on the right side allows us to control the panning of the master. So now we control the master here. And on dial number 4, this gives us track fader control. Currently selected track, we can control that, and clicking once on the right side allows us to control the track fader for the master. So let's go back to page 1. We're going to get into the command menu and take a look at what this profile offers. Now there's 8 pages of commands here. There are 6 on the main part of the profile, and plus an import page and an export page. And you can navigate through and access the many different commands that we have listed here. Going to the Tools profile, once again we have our transport on 3 and 4, and we have a undo history, so we can undo and redo with our dial. More command menu functions just by pressing on that part of the screen will give you access to these commands. And back to page 1. Under the MIDI profile, we have access to 4 different pages that are all MIDI related commands. If we go into our add track, all the commands that you would need in the add track functions. And if we go to mix console here, you can see we have a little bit of repeated commands here, as we've just seen, the jog and scroll, the zoom, the timeline, and the transport controls. And we also have transport controls repeated up on the keys themselves, as well as your mutes and solos and arms. And on page 3, we have much of the same controls, just configured a little bit differently here. But you can also control with the buttons your currently selected track or your master with those buttons if you choose to use them that way. Now on page 4, we have a few different things here. We of course have the jog and scroll, and we have the zoom timeline. But on dials 3 and 4, these keys will allow us to move parameters in your VSTs. Okay, I've got a VST open here, and let's say that I want to use my dial number 3 to adjust the first parameter here, the pan random. Well, by just placing our cursor over top of that particular key and rotating the dial, that will allow us to adjust its parameter. I can move the mouse or the phaser mix, rotate the same dial, and it's going to make that adjustment for us. Now the behavior is different between these two dials. This is an AI MIDI dial. So what this will allow us to do is, let's say I'm panned over here on pan random, and I can adjust. You see the mouse doesn't move. If I use dial number 3, the mouse makes a movement, and there's a reason for this. Certain VSTs will respond to one dial and not the other, so you'll have to do a bit of experimentation as to see which one works best for you. As a word of note, the AI works a little smoother, and so wherever possible, you probably would want to go to this one if it's available to you. In addition, what we can also do is I can press on the lock button here, and you see it lights up. Now when I rotate this and move my mouse somewhere else, once I start rotating, it will still rotate that spot even though my mouse is somewhere else, because I've locked it to that parameter. And I can free that up just by hitting the lock button again. Now the control has been lifted, and I can move it over to somewhere else and start controlling a different parameter. So that's useful on its own, but I'm going to show you in a few minutes how you can assign dials to specific parameters so you don't have to keep on moving the mouse. So that's coming up. So swiping over to the next page gives us our quick controls. You can see on the left-hand side here, I've got quick controls visible. Now, if you've gone through the process in Cubase 11 or earlier that we showed of how to assign these quick controls, these will be working for you. For Cubase 12 users, this works just out of the box. No need to set it up. So on dial number 1 here, I have the first parameter is selected. So by rotating, you can see my first parameter is the pan random, and I can rotate that function. Pressing on number 2 jumps down to the phaser mix, and I can rotate that. So the red ones are the first 4, and the blue ones are the second 4 for the total of 8 quick controls that we have available to us. So if I go into dial number 2 and click on the first icon, we're moving brilliance, and we move the third one, which is overdrive mix, and then the fourth one will be the phaser depth in this case. And then if you want to move to the second set of 4, you click on the blue dials and adjust these parameters. The same can be done with the buttons above if you choose to work that way instead. Top button is going to move the first 4 parameters, quick control parameters, and then the blue keys will control the second set. And you can see when I press on it, it is moving it down and until it hits the bottom, and it won't move anymore. Double click, and that will move it in a different direction. Double click, now I can move down. Double click, Now I can move up. And that's the way all of these keys will work. Scroll once more to the final page on this profile. This allows us to control our EQ. So if I go to my bass grit and I open it up, you can see I have some EQ parameters already set. By rotating these dials, this will allow us to control the 4 different points I have on my EQ. And you can experiment with these and you'll quickly get the knack of how to make the adjustments you need. Scrolling once again takes us back to the first page and back out to the main. Now if we go into the editor profile, you can see we have a lot of the same functions that are available to us. The quantization dial, the zoom dial, we have our VST controller, but we also have in a 4th dial, we have a different parameter here that will allow us to adjust our MIDI notes. So if I load up our MIDI notes here, and by selecting our mouse and moving over top of and selecting a MIDI note and leaving my mouse over the top, with the up and down selected, moving it up and down will move that MIDI note up or down the keys. Now if I mouse left and right, I can move it in time. If I take the mouse and move it so that we get the double arrowhead and move this left and right, I can extend the MIDI note or decrease it. And a few more pages of the same effects, and then we're out. Transport, as the name says, this features all the different transport commands. Now if we're going to colorize, you can see that we have the ability to colorize our currently selected tracks. Now this does require a little bit of setup. So let's swipe until we get to our 3rd page here, and then we can open up the Colorize Selected Events window. And it is a floating window, so you want to place it in a position that you're always going to leave it, because what we're going to do is we're going to record the positions of each of these colors so that we can call them up at any time and just change the colors of our tracks. So let's assume that I like this position. I want to keep it here. Let's go back to page 1 of this profile. We want to record the position of the red color chip. So let's place our mouse over the red color chip till it highlights, and they're going to press and hold on the key here until you see that green check mark. Now, whenever we're working and we've got a track that we want to colorize with our Colorize Selected Events window open, all we need to do is press that and it will change the color for us. And you would go through and record the positions for each of these colors. So for orange, that's recorded. For light orange, that's recorded, etc. You go through, you complete all the colors, and then with that window always open, you can always change the color of your currently selected track. Back out. Now we're going to swipe to page 2, and let's get into the VST plugins. Let's select this track, and then we're going to open up Edit Instrument, so our VST opens up. Now you'll see that we've got a previous and a next preset. This will automatically cycle through the factory presets of your current VST, just by going back and forth. Now the ones below it will allow you to go through your previous and next presets of your user presets. So if in this particular I've got Halion open, what we want to do is we record the positions of the previous and next arrow keys. So in this VST they're located over here. So this is previous. So click and hold on the previous preset there until you see the green check mark, and the next, press and hold. Now using this key will allow us to cycle through the different user presets that we have defined. Okay, let's swing over quickly to page 2 here. What you see here is we have some preset effects that you can load up at the press of a button. You do have to do one program setting to get it all set up, and that is with this instrument keybind. Let's press the VST instrument so we get the dialog box open up here. We want to place our cursor over top of the instrument drop-down dialog box. So right there is where you want it. We're going to press on hold on this part of the dial, so you see location saved comes up. Now what that has done is that has saved that location so that I can press on any one of these VST keys, and as long as I have that VST in my system, it will load that into a new track for me. So let's go down, let's find Halion here. Here we go. So press on Halion, you see it opens that up, creates a new track, and loads the VST into it. We can do the same thing if we have Pad Shop, for example. Loads that up and adds in the Pad Shop. Now if we go over to the third page here, you can see we have a couple of user keys, and we have even more of them on the fourth page there. So these user keys will allow us to, even though we've provided some of the more common ones here for you to access, if you have your own, and you're likely going to have your own VSTs that aren't listed here, you can easily create your own. So let's say, for example, we want to add in retrolog. So if we go down here, we can see we've got retrolog loaded. Want to make sure that you spell this exactly the way it is seen here, because what we're going to do, we're going to go to the Stream Deck software. I'm going to click on this key here. In fact, we're going to double click on it because it is a macro, and it has a whole list of macros that we've created. Click on this system text, and now what you want to do is you want to type in our case, retrolog, and type it exactly the way it appears in Cubase. And good idea to copy and paste this into the title so that we can then see it up here and we know at a glance what it is for. And then when we go back out to Cubase and we press on that user key, it loads up our retrolog VST. And what would also be a good idea is if you go back out by clicking the multi-action up here, and we can change our title to include retrolog, and we can say show title, and then we see it appear there so we know what it is we've assigned. And you can go through and do that for any of these user keys that you want, for any of the VSTs that you want to load up. And we've also included, if you go into your Sideshow Effects pack, if you go into the icons folder under VST and under VST again, you'll see that we've got over 80 different icons of some of the most popular VSTs. So if you've loaded up one of these and want to use these icons, you can do that. So let's find retrolog here. Here's retrolog 2, that's the one we loaded up. Let's go back to our page. There's the retrolog 2. We would take this, drag it, and drop it onto there. And we can then hide the title. We don't need the title now. So now it appears on your device. And of course, we have the VST controls also available here for your convenience. And we have another page of quick controls. Now if we go into Insert Effects, let's take a track and we're going to open up our channel settings. So if we move to page 2, I'm going to show you that we have, just like we have the different VST instruments that are pre-built, we also have some effects that are pre-built here. So at the press of a button, we can load in an effect into any one of these insert channels. So if I select this insert channel here, mouse over that, I can add in, say, a stereo delay. It loads it into that particular channel. Now, you may find it even quicker let's just delete that effect, to go back to page 1, press and hold as I'm hovering over insert 1, insert 2, you see I'm getting the check marks, insert 3, and insert 4, so that if I want to just get my mouse into that position, say I want something in number 2, swing over and add in the stereo delay, it's going to put it into insert 2 for me. Now we've got this effect loaded. We can control its parameters as well. Like before, we can just take the mouse, put it over top of feedback. We can start rotating the dial that allows us to control that parameter. But in addition, you can see on dials 1, 2, and 3, we have some custom dial controls here. This will allow us to save the positions of a particular effect. So let's say we want to save feedback for dial number 1 on the first position. So I can mouse over that part, press and hold. I have saved that location. Now I can rotate and adjust that parameter. Do the same thing with the low filter down here. Now what you want to try and get in the habit of doing is pressing on the command first. You'll see it'll jump to your cursor to a different location. So once you've pressed it, then you take your mouse, you put it over top of the parameter that you want to control, then press and hold on that part of the screen. So it says location saved, and now rotating will adjust that parameter. If I want to go back and adjust the feedback, I press on that part, it jumps up there, and I can now jump between these two. Since my mouse is already there, I can also use the AI controller, a little finer control. So if you wanted to, you can just do this, back and forth, or you can just use the dial it was initially assigned to. And you can do that for any of these dial controls here. And we have another page of effects that are pre-built and a whole page of user effects. Same way, the way we showed you with the VSTs, you can program your own effects to be loaded in the same way by going to your Stream Deck software, selecting on one of these and changing the type here. And that will load in your effect. Once again, we have the EQ controls, some more quick controls, and another bank of inserts should you need them. Grid Quantize, series of commands associated with quantization. Custom. This will allow you to have a one-stop shop for all of your, if you want to control VSTs, parameters, effect parameters, whatever you choose. Just the same way we showed you with the dials, how you can assign particular parameters and lock it to a particular dial, you can do the same thing here with the button commands. So I currently have the stereo delay open. Let's say we want to adjust the delay to feedback. I mouse over that area, press and hold on this key. Now I can rotate with dial 3 or 4 in that area. If my mouse is somewhere else, I just press on that key, it takes me there, and I can adjust that parameter. And dials 1 and 2 can also be used in the same way we showed you before, where I will click on that part of the screen. Let's say we go over low filter for 2 and press and hold, that location saved. And now I can make my adjustments as I need. Now you can also use these if you wanted to. You can use any of these. If we go back to Mix Console, I can even adjust the track faders with these. So I can assign that position as a control point. And now I can adjust by pressing the up and down here. I can now adjust my track fader up and down. And I can adjust the second track fader. And now adjust it. Now I can go back and forth between these two tracks and adjust them as I need. And we have another page, and then back to the main page. Now in the control room, this is only available on Cubase 12. We can open up the control room with this button here, so it becomes a floating window for us. And we have control over the dim, our plate, and our metronome, as well as we can control the different parameters at the bottom here. If you don't see them, you would need to click on the main that might be hidden here. And you can control your talk dim, your listen dim, and your listen. And this will control your full control room. Swiping over gives us the same controls, but also includes the click volume. And you'll see that moving these also adjusts the track faders above. You can use them in the same way. They're linked to each other. Whichever way you find easier to work. In the quick control, we've seen that we have different quick control windows in some of the other profiles. Well, this profile is dedicated solely to quick controls. So it gives you the same features, but combines everything all together with the custom. So that's it. This is very quick navigation of how to install and how to use the Cubase Pro Profiles for the Stream Deck Plus device. I encourage you to read through the PDF that we've included with the pack. It gives you a lot of detailed information. Hopefully you'll be able to find all the answers you need in that document. Until next time, we'll talk to you soon.